Hello and welcome to another interesting edition of the program Service to Humanity, your window into the activities of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development and its agencies as it carries out its mandate. The year 2022 was a very eventful year for the ministry. Last year, it launched a 5-year strategic plan as well as formulated an IDP policy amongst other milestones. This evening, therefore, we'll review some major events held by the ministry and our agencies in the year 2022. I'm your host, Habib Zakzak, urging you to stay tuned for details of these and more coming your way shortly.
Rayuwa an dan sha matsala amma tun da abin yazo hannu muna jujjuya sana'o'in mu haka an kulle ma duk mukan yi kuma a cikin haka sai Allah ya fifita kowa ya samu dan abin harkoki ina yi gishiri magi dukkan muna kulla habbar kono duk muna kullawa habbar kono ma mu daka shi mai yajin shi duk ana kullawa da mun gode Allah mun yaba annabi tunda wannan tallafi izo muna mai aya komai da komai yayi tarihi ko sosai tunda duka muna musu wannan makayan makarantar nan ka dinka ka sake ma yaro mun gode gwamnati mun gode mata Allah ya sa kuma ta gama lafiya.
Our first stop will be the Management Diary, where we bring you news on recent happenings in the humanitarian ministry as well as her agencies. On the news, federal government reiterates commitments to addressing the plight of missing persons in Nigeria, just as a coalition of NGOs commend NEDC for massive project execution in the Northeast. Stay tuned for details.
Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development has said the federal government is committed to addressing the plight of missing persons in the country in a comprehensive and humanitarian manner. The Humanitarian Minister Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk made this known at a one-day meeting with stakeholders involved in the plight of missing persons in Nigeria held in Abuja. Speaking through the Director, Humanitarian Affairs of the Ministry, Alhaji Ali Grema, the minister stated that the federal government is very concerned about the issue of missing persons in the nation and that calls for various attention, a stepping up efforts, and a greater commitment from all relevant stakeholders to create a national mechanism for preventing disappearances, determining the fate and whereabouts of the missing, and offering assistance to their families.
There are several causes of that led to disappearances. Nigeria has witnessed several conflicts and insurgencies resulting not only in loss of lives but also cases of missing persons with more than 13,000 families still searching for their loved ones that have gone missing. During conflict-induced displacement, children faced risks such as exploitations, violence, mental distress, and disappearance, as many also end up alone with no news of their families' whereabouts.
The minister outlined some of the steps the federal government has already taken to address the tragic and frequently ignored humanitarian and social issues, including Nigeria's joining the Global Alliance for the Missing in June 2022, making it the only member of Africa and one of the Alliance's 10 founding members.
As a member of the Alliance, we should endeavor to bring to bear the collective influence, diplomatic, political, and financial capacity of government to improve the prevention of and response to cases of separated and missing persons.
In addition to continuous work with all stakeholders at bilateral and multilateral forum to achieve the objectives of the alliance, Farouk reassured that Nigeria will establish a national mechanism to raising awareness about the plight of missing persons and the needs of their families, establish a collaborative network between different stakeholders, among others. The Northeast Development Commission (NEDC) has earned recognition from the Public Accounting Watch (PAW) which is a coalition of 21 Nigerian civil society organizations. The commission was recognized for carrying out various critical projects throughout the Northeast sub-region. A delegation from the coalition led by Dr. Oki Azikiwe passed a vote of confidence on the NEDC after it went on a one-week independent tour of the agency's program and learned just how much it had accomplished in recent years without receiving much public attention. The team, which visited the Northeast from January 9 to January 17, 2023, came to the conclusion that the humanitarian agency had accomplished its goals of coordinating the resettlement, rehabilitation, integration, and reconstruction of infrastructure for victims of terrorism, as well as tackle the menace of poverty, illiteracy, ecological challenges in the northeastern states, and other related matters. Azikiwe described the Northeast Development Commission (NEDC) as a force for good, adding that over 20,000 natives have benefited annually from its work. He further stated that the agency has resuscitated the region's devastated education sector and carried out thousands of housing projects across the state. The coalition therefore concluded that the NEDC has effectively tackled the menace of poverty, illiteracy, and ecological challenges in the northeastern state with transparency, accountability, and diligence.
Thanks for staying tuned. One of the strategic pillars of the humanitarian ministry is strengthening policies and institutional frameworks, and within 3 years of delivering service to humanity, the ministry has developed, revised, and worked with other agencies to formulate policies and plans that seek to help the poor and vulnerable in the nation. From its 5-year strategic plan to the IDP policy, and then to formulating a roadmap to implementing these policies, the ministry has been hard at work to create policy documents that will shape how things are done in the coordination of a response to humanitarian crisis. As we review major events in the ministry for the year 2022 in our next segment, we shall see some of these policies and how they were presented to the public. Do stay tuned.
When the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was established, it was given 7 key mandates by the President. 3 of these 7 mandates border on policy formulation in recognition of the need to build institutional frameworks. These mandates are to formulate and implement social policies for improved living standard for the elderly, the vulnerable, and socially disadvantaged persons. Formulate policy on all activities relating to the disaster management in Nigeria and coordinate the plans and programs for efficient and effective response to disaster at national level, and to formulate and coordinate implementation of social development policies and programs in collaboration with other MDAs. Towards this end, the ministry in its 3 years of existence has recorded successes along the lines of policy formulation. Some of these policies from the ministry include National Policy on Aging, National Migration Policy, National Disability Policy, National Disaster Risk Management Policy, National Social Protection Policy, and National Policy for Internally Displaced Persons. Early in the year 2022, the ministry, in a milestone event, launched its 5-year strategic roadmap designed to help it achieve its mandate of managing disasters, implementing social development, and developing, as well as providing durable solutions to humanitarian issues in the country. The roadmap, built on 7 strategic pillars, was unveiled as the guiding document for how the ministry will go about the theme of mapping out a life of dignity for all Nigerians. Special guest of honor at the launch, Vice President Yemi Oshibanjo, was represented by the Deputy Chief of Staff to the President, Mr. Diola Ibrahim Rahman, expressed delight at the launch, which he described as a milestone in the life of a strategic ministry in the Buhari administration.
In the Northeast, the process of resettling displaced persons and refugees in their communities has already started. This represents the first step in the process of turning the tide of events in that region in the direction of peace and recovery. There is, of course, much work that remains to be done. This is why the strategic roadmap that has been formulated by the ministry is so important.
Chief host of the event and Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Sadia Umar Farouk, in her address, explained that the roadmap was developed in collaboration with agencies implementing its mandates and introduces mechanisms that will be deployed to ensure results delivery.
The roadmap we are launching today is the end product of the cohesive analysis of the valuable insights, feedback, and inputs received from the ministry's departments and agencies. This strategic roadmap is aptly themed, mapping out a life of dignity for all. In line with the ministry's onerous task of effectively discharging our responsibilities that are pivotal to the economy of the nation and the well-being of the citizenry.
The minister said the full implementation of the roadmap will not only consolidate the priority areas of the federal government, it will also improve lives of the vulnerable and restore dignity. She assured Nigerians that the ministry remains committed to actualizing the objectives of the roadmap.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today I'm also launching to the world the national policy on internal displaced persons.
Closely related to this is the formal launch of the National Policy on Internally Displaced Persons (IDPs) in the month of March 2022. The policy document, approved by the Federal Executive Council in September 2021, was launched during the ministry's humanitarian open house, themed Coordinating for Durable Humanitarian Solutions, the Journey So Far. In her keynote address, the minister stated that new realities and emerging trends in the humanitarian space in Nigeria were taken into cognizance before developing and adopting the policy. She also assured that plans were ongoing to domesticate the African Union Kampala Convention.
This policy therefore draws extensively on the guidance of international and national frameworks on the prevention of internal displacement, as well as those on protection and assistance of internally displaced persons. The Kampala Convention, the UN Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement, and the fair minimum standards for humanitarian assistance have significantly defined the direction of this policy. This policy envisions an equitable and stable Nigerian society that is proactive and responsive to situations that could lead to internal displacement, where the right to life of dignity is guaranteed for all internally displaced persons, and where adequate measures and durable solutions exist to prevent and mitigate the impact of internal displacement on vulnerable populations.
Part of the activities for that day saw the minister presenting the ministry's information brochure and the National Social Investment Program information brochure to the public. The brochure is a book containing all information on the ministry, its departments, programs, and agencies. In the same vein, a pictorial compendium chronicling the programs, activities, and achievements of the ministry was also unveiled. As a follow-up to the policy launch, the National Humanitarian Coordination Technical Working Group at its 5th meeting deliberated on a national action plan for the implementation of the IDP policy. Chairman of the meeting, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk, who was represented by Permanent Secretary Nasir Sanugwarzo, said the meeting's goal was to articulate and design an implementable implementation strategy for the IDP policy. He was represented by the Director of Humanitarian Affairs, Alhaji Ali Grema.
Considering the urgent need to activate a process of closing the gap in coordination of management of IDPs, this fifth meeting will focus primarily on update on national policy on internally displaced persons after its approval by the Federal Executive Council on the 1st of September 2021. And the next step to be taken to drive its implementation. It is expected that stakeholders will exchange ideas, views, and agree on the methodology towards the development of actionable national action plan for the implementation of the IDP policy.
In their various goodwill messages, stakeholders pledged support towards the actualization of the IDP policy.
The House of Representatives will continue to partner with all relevant organizations and the ministries to ensure that the success of this policy is achieved.
It has been an honour to work with and provide support to the Ministry, and what you would like to, in line with this mandate, assure the Federal Ministry of its commitment to provide the necessary support to ensure the mandate of the Ministry is achieved.
You are still watching Service to Humanity, and tonight's special package features major events held by the Humanitarian Ministry and her agencies last year. 2022, Nigeria also experienced one disaster or the other, from illegal refinery explosions in the southeast, gas explosions in the northwest, or collapsed buildings in Lagos. Add that to imminent flood disasters because of the rains, and you will agree with me that a proactive disaster prevention and mitigation policy was imperative. As our review continues in our next segment, we shall be recapping a meeting the ministry held to review what had been done towards giving Nigerians a comprehensive plan for managing disasters. We shall also review an event that heralded the validation of the NEDC Northeast Stabilization and Development Master Plan. Don't go away.
Another landmark event organized by the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs was a technical review of the National Risk Management Policy. The event, which took place in Abuja, was organized in collaboration with key stakeholders in the month of May. The policy addresses new and developing concerns in disaster management, as well as actively respond to recurring disasters such as flooding, fire outbreaks, industrial and fuel explosions, diseases, violence and communal disputes across Nigeria. Director, Disaster Risk Management of the Humanitarian Ministry, Alhaji Ali Grema, gave a brief history of the National Disaster Risk Management Policy.
The National Disaster Risk Management Policy was developed in July 2019 by NEMA in collaboration with UNDP and other critical stakeholders. At the time, the ministry was not established. Since the establishment of the ministry, it became pertinent to the ministry to conduct a review of the existing policy to better understanding the scope of the coverage of the policy.
Grema reiterated that the expected outcome of the technical review of the National Risk Management Policy was to ensure that stakeholders are aware of the ministry's rules and input into the policy, and that participants review and validate those inputs.
To build a nation where peace and justice reign. You may be seated.
For the Northeast, there was the development of a stabilization and development master plan, following over a decade of damages and atrocities perpetrated by insurgents in the northeast states of Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, Taraba, and Yobe. The Northeast Development Commission (NEDC) launched the Northeast Stabilization and Development Master Plan to rebuild and revive economic activities in the region. The master plan was launched at the International Conference Center in Abuja on Thursday, 1st September 2022. The master plan is a 10-year document with a total sum of 31.01 trillion naira earmarked for it already. In his welcome address at the event, the Managing Director and CEO of NEDC, Muhammad Al-Ghali, said the plan was necessitated by the NEDC Act that required the Commission to develop a master plan based on the needs assessment of the zone, adding that the Commission had engaged stakeholders and conducted study in 121 local governments in the 6 states in the zone to identify interventions that would revive activities.
The validation event we are witnessing today signifies the culminating from the baseline studies and robust engagement with all critical stakeholders. In line with both the localization framework of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, as well as the mandate of the Commission as a federal coordinating agency in the Northeast Zone, we are extremely delighted to present to you a compendium of relevant, demand-driven, viable, and sustainable schemes, programs, and projects, which all stakeholders can key into in returning the Northeast Zone to peace, harmony, and prosperity.
I wish to call on all stakeholders in the private and public
On his
sector.
part, the chairman of the occasion and secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, urged stakeholders to invest in the region as it is witnessing improved security and gradually returning to sustainable peace and stability.
At this juncture, I wish to call on all stakeholders in the private and public sectors, development partners, especially donors, to garner resources and invest optimally in the richly endowed but least exploited Northeast region. Thankfully, the region is witnessing improved security and gradually returning to sustainable peace and stability.
In his remarks, while congratulating the NEDC on the launch of the master plan, Governor of Borno State and Chairman of the Northeast Governors Forum, Professor Babagana Zulum, urged the Commission to communicate on interventions it is carrying out in the region with their state government to avoid repetition of activities.
The development of Northeast Recovery and Development Regional Master Plan is perhaps the greatest achievement of Northeast Development Commission to date. This is because, if properly and strategically implemented, it will not only complement what the governors are doing in the states by investing in transformational projects, but also serve as tipping point for the transformation of the region.
The chief host of the event and the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, Hajia Sadia Umar Farouk, who was represented by her senior technical assistant, Dr. Umar Binder, urged all the ministries, agencies and departments as well as development partners to use the master plan as a blueprint in selecting their interventions for the Northeast region.
While congratulating the management and staff of the NEDC for this achievement, I will urge you to develop a robust coordination as well as monitoring, evaluation and impact assessment framework for the effective implementation of the master plan, which will assist the ministry in tracking and assessing your project.
To unveil the Northeast Stabilization and Development Plan for the benefit of the people of the Northeast and to the glory of God.
With that, we come to the end of this week's episode of Service to Humanity. Until I come your way again next week, stay safe. Remember, your questions and suggestions are always welcome on any of our social media platforms or the Ministry's page on Facebook or Twitter. Good night and God bless Nigeria. See you next week.